Hello you lovely lot and welcome to a new video. My name is Katie and we're going to take a look at the February scrawlrbox. Also known as scrawlrbox 90. I can't believe they're at 90, that's wild. Anyway, upon opening this beautiful monthly subscription box, we have a print and this month's featured artist is Kerry Lemon. And it's a very nice picture of a leaf and I quite like that. That's going on the wall. Our surface to work on is the Canson Mixed Media 300 GSM A5 sketch pad. We also appear to have some paints this month. So we have the Daler-Rowney System 3 Fluid Acrylics and they come in 3 colours. And those are a lemon yellow, a titanium white and a cerulean blue hue. We also have a Princeton Select synthetic paintbrush. It's a short angular shader and it says 1/4 on it, so I guess that means the size. We also have a paint marker and that is the Lyra Graduate Mark All Black. Of course, we also have the Scrawler magazine and every month they'll put in artists who've used the hashtag for the prompt and display it on that page, and yay, I'm in there again, I can't believe it, as well as a few other familiar names in there too, so well done! Now, of course, I did mention prompt, and this month's prompt is Organic Origins. So let's take a little swatch of these supplies first and see how the inspiration springs. Now these Daler-Rowney paints have quite an interesting way of applying them. They come in a narrow bottle with quite a narrow nib, so I guess to a certain extent you could use that as a pen, as you've just seen on the page there. The paint itself is, as suggested, quite fluid and spreads across the page quite easily. And as well for the marker, again, if you add some water to that, you can treat that like a paint as well. And I did end up putting some in the palette and pretty much using it that way throughout. But that is enough waffling about the swatching. I think you can get a better grasp of the materials, at least in my opinion, if you just go for it with a piece. And since as we do get quite a bit of paper these days in the subscription boxes, that's even better. The paper itself is quite nice to work on. It's quite a thick feeling paper and it does have a bit of a texture onto it. I suppose it's a bit like a faux fabric kind of texture. It's quite subtle, but you do know it's there, especially when I was sketching this out. It does tend to interfere with nice smooth lines, but I kind of figured we can move beyond that because I'm going to be painting over it anyway. The brush as well, I'm quite impressed with. I don't really use angled brushes very often, but they are quite a versatile tool to have. Not only can you create broad strokes, but you can also use the corners of the brush as well to just create a little bit more of a finer line. Obviously a round brush would be better for that, but I kind of think with a bit of an all-in-one brush like this, you can do quite a fair bit still, so it's quite a nice addition to have in there. Now I extracted some of the black acrylic ink from that pen and placed it in a palette, and I added quite a lot of water in there. I also included some yellow to create this rather dirty poopy green colour for the background. I'm not really selling it there, am I? Although I could mix a green using the blue and yellow in there, you do get quite a synthetic sort of, well, I guess borderline garish green, and I just wanted to tone that down a little bit. So by adding a little bit of black to yellow, or yellow to the black, it created a bit more of a muted colour, and that was nice to be able to build up some of the layers there. And you could also argue it was a bit more of an organic green. I'd begun layering everything with quite a watered down mixture of paint, but as everything had dried and I was happy with where things were going, it was time to add a more concentrated version of these paints. I'd managed to mix a bit of a minty green by using all 3 tubes of paint there. Now that white isn't super opaque, and I do find that with the System 3 acrylics, they're not majorly opaque, but they kind of get the job done with a bit of perseverance there. You can always keep layering over, but there is a point where it just won't, so that's okay, we know that, we move on. But I thought that minty green was a nice colour for the vines of whatever these flowers are that I've decided to paint there. I thought by adding quite a thick layer of the white paint and then just merging some of that yellow in there would just add a little bit of depth and texture. Again, you'll notice I'm being quite loose with everything here. Partially down to this little ongoing quest of me just wanting to loosen up my style, but again, it's a little bit of a challenge to myself to see if I go too far with it, how I'm going to rectify it, so it's all good. So, my first impressions of the box. Well, I'm sure if you're a bit of a regular viewer here, you'll know that acrylics are not one of my favourite painting mediums. That's mainly down to overdoing it during my college and university years because it was relatively cheap at the time and I could just get a hold of it easier. I could use it like a watercolour, but I think in my case it was just too much of a good thing at the time. That's not to say I hate them, there's definitely mediums out there I really don't enjoy, but they're, like I say, they're not a favourite, I just overused them at the time. However, I do think that enough time has passed now to perhaps start coming round to using them again, and I do plan on doing something with that massive round canvas I mentioned earlier this year. I think it's going to have some acrylics on there because I do have quite a few to use up as well, and no doubt these will probably be included in that. One thing I can appreciate about acrylic paints is, though, they are versatile. I mean, you can use them like a watercolour to a certain extent, as well as, I guess, having a more thicker application, which is similar to what you would expect from an oil paint, I guess. I guess an upside and a downside is they dry very, very quickly. And yeah, I guess that's a good thing, but in my opinion, I'm a little bit conflicted really. Sometimes I want my paint to dry quickly and then sometimes it's dried too quickly, so I guess I'm just going to have to reacquaint myself with the balance there. Another consideration is they're pretty permanent, and once it's down, especially even in a watercolour-y kind of way, it's kind of hard to lift it back up again. But on the upside though, you can just wait for it to dry and layer over it without having to worry about it, I guess, rehydrating the layer below and causing too much muddiness. But I guess these are more considerations rather than criticisms, and hey, it's all subject to your own opinions and painting experiences. Now, of course, we did have quite a limited colour scheme here, and that's okay, that just adds to the challenge. What we've lacked in red and warmer tones, we've just got to make do with what we've got, and since as we've got a bit of a flowery goddess kind of character here, maybe she's the green woman. It seemed, anyway, only fitting to incorporate those colours into her skin tones. I added quite a watered down greeny yellow that I'd mixed just to lay down those shadows, and the areas I wanted highlights I just left it as it is. I didn't particularly want to use the white paint on there because I would have had to have used it quite thickly, and sometimes you've just got that difference of texture on the paper, and I'm not a big fan of that, to be honest, at least in my own work. At this stage I thought I'd take advantage of using the nozzle. I'm sure you saw earlier I did it on the flowers themselves, but I wasn't happy with it. Easily rectified and moved away for the brush, but I thought it would be nice to add some little dainty flowers in her hair, and it worked great with these nozzles. They're not super precise, but they're actually quite perfect for dotting. Just be careful and be aware of the flow of the paint. Sometimes it kind of just gushes out. Anyway, I was happy at the stage I was with the painting side of things for now, and I thought let's try and add some outlines in there. The paint marker was pretty much what you would expect from a paint marker, I guess. It was useful to be able to use it as a black paint, but as far as lining goes, it's pretty much the same as a Posca. As always though, I do find that thick nibs on small paper can be a little bit of a challenge. However, this wasn't too bad. The paint flow was pretty good and it did a job, I guess. The lines are a little thicker than what I like, but I don't feel like it actually makes anything look wrong with this piece. It just makes things look a little bit bolder, and of course I can still go in and rectify some areas by using that acrylic paint. I do always find it a bit of a gamble at this stage of a picture when it comes to outlining, because I do think, oh, what if I really mess it up? But again, as mentioned, to a certain extent you can rectify some areas with that paint, so it's not quite the end of the world there. I think the areas where I'd got the most hesitation was perhaps on her face, because obviously, and as I previously mentioned, I'd used the paint there like a watercolour because I wanted it to look subtle, and if I made any mistakes there, I would have to repaint the thing entirely, and obviously I wouldn't be able to use that watercolour style there, and yeah, it would just change the overall look for it. But luckily, the gods of steady hands were with me, and I was quite happy with how everything outlined on there, so crisis averted. The pen was also really nice to add some hair textures in there. It was good that it allowed things to stand out a little bit, and you know I do enjoy drawing hair and textures like that, so all was good and I was very happy. Funnily enough, whilst I was on vacation, I did end up buying a pad of the same paper we've got in this box. Obviously, I wasn't at home for when the box dropped through my letterbox, and I was very good and didn't look at any spoilers online. I'm obviously back home now, and I will be doing a little bit of an art haul. Mainly just bits and bobs I've picked up and needed, as well as a few little treats I got on holiday. There's also a couple of items I'm waiting to order, so once they arrive, I will share with you the little bits and bobs I've picked up. So be sure to make sure you are subscribed, all that good stuff, so you don't miss out on that video. And of course, it won't be just me showing you a bunch of stuff. I will try and do something with some of those items there. Anyway, let's get back to it. So I decided to outline quite a lot here. I kind of forgot just how much of that footage I'd left in there, but it's nice to share that process as I go along, and you'll see the direction I worked. I made sure to work from left to right as much as I could, and that would avoid any smudging and any potential having to go over areas unnecessarily. After doing that, I decided that background was just a little bit too similar tone-wise to the foreground, and I decided to just give it a layer of watered down black paint, and I like it. It's made things pop out a little bit. It's made our little flower goddess here stand out a little bit more and just look a little bit more magical, which I'm all for that. I found that angular brush actually was quite good to get into those nooks and crannies, as well as just spreading that paint around quite quickly, just to avoid any sort of odd overlaps. I didn't want it super smooth, but I didn't want it looking terrible at the same time either. So in conclusion, I actually did quite enjoy this box. Even though it's not one of my favourite mediums, I thought let's just take this challenge on and go for it, and I did end up enjoying this quite a lot. I think you've got a good amount of items to go at. It's always nice to have a good pad of paper, and I quite like Canson paper. I always feel like it can take a bit of a beating. I liked the inclusion of the angular brush. It encouraged me to think about how I was going to put the paint down rather than just going for the nice easy option of a round brush. So yeah, I was happy with that. But of course, let me know downstairs what you thought of this box, whether you had it or whether you didn't. Just let me know what you think. I thought it was a nice surprise. Well, it's not really a surprise, I knew it was coming, but it was a nice thing to return home to. Now, I just want to say thank you to everyone who commented on the videos whilst I was away. I'm sorry I haven't quite gotten around to replying to you all, but I will be doing that very soon. And of course, I want to say a massive thank you for watching this video. I do hope you've enjoyed it and found it useful. There are some lovely videos on screen I think you're going to enjoy, so why not give one of those a click? And until the next time, I'll see you lovely lot soon. Bye!